Now online we have joining us from Islamabad, Pakistan is political analyst Javed Rana. Javed, thank you so much for joining us here on A News once again here on Diplomacy. Well, let's talk about what is going on with the Israel as well. So the genocide in Israel is the genocide that Israel does in Gaza continues for a while, and the attacks are continuing. What would you say about the latest situation?
Well, I think I was hearing this was the fifth time that USA has blocked any ceasefire agreement, the supply of the aid to Gaza. This is an extraordinary situation in the history, in the history of the mankind, where West, more particularly the USA, has been blocking every tangible effort which could have long ago brought this genocide to an end. Now it means that there is obviously a division within the West. Some of the countries are not willing to support the apartheid state as much as it used to do because of the public pressure. But one thing seems to be clear, that the USA is not going to desert Israel at any cost. So we have to see what is at stake, because of which the US is now putting up with all criticism, all kind of criticism. It has been banning international students just because they were protesting against apartheid state. It has been scrutinizing everything in the USA, which could have possibly revived protest against Israel. And then internationally speaking, it has left no stone unturned when it comes to suppressing the efforts to bring a peace in the Middle East. Now, in that context, again, this is a purely an evangelical agenda. There is an evangelical government in the White House, and they are pursuing Israel's theological and religious agenda, which talks about the greater Israel, something I've been saying time and again. But given the fact that these are the ground realities we are seeing there. We have seen 22 Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. That is a bigger indicator that this expansion plan would continue. By and large, they have occupied Gaza. Just very small parts have not been occupied so far, which they would, it looks like. And then they are also expanding to the occupied West Bank, and 20 to 25 kilometers have been occupied of Syria, and in a similar fashion, they have occupied territories in Lebanon. Something Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has been saying with the proud that they, under his administration, the territories of Israel is being expanded, and they have a map inside Israel's parliament, which by and large includes much of the Middle East. So the bigger trouble here is that there is no united, concerted response on the part of the Muslim countries, more particularly from the Arab states. And then what we are seeing now in response from the West, it looks like that Israel is more a liability for the West, more particularly for France and now for the UK. But again, they have to undo what they have already done, and that is they have to suspend the supplies of the weapons. They have to suspend the sharing of intelligence. They have to do everything which makes it sure that Israel is sanctioned in an effective manner, where Israel is crippled not to continue with this genocide. That is not happening on the part of the Europe. Europe is already in crisis. Its focus is obviously the Ukraine war. It wants to win that war, or at least neutralize that war. That is not happening. So whatever we are hearing from the European countries, more particularly UK and France, that only indicates that they are basically facing the heat of the public pressure, and because of which they have to do something where they are being seen by the public that they are doing something to bring an end to this genocide, and they are no longer part of the genocide. I think their actions so far do not match with their words. They need to do a lot on this issue.
Well, lastly, really shortly, I would like to ask you your opinion about the announcement that White House made in June 2nd, 2025. Israel endorsed the U.S. proposed plan for a ceasefire, 60 days truce actually. Do you think that it is going to be happening, or do we have a key challenges?
Well, we have to see what happened with the previous ceasefire agreements. Both of the ceasefire agreements were violated, and more particularly of the January this year's agreement. And under this agreement, the Israeli troops had to be withdrawn from the Gaza, and there had to be negotiations for the withdrawal of the troops. So instead of withdrawing the troops or talking with the Hamas to bring an end to the Israeli occupation, Israel opted essentially to continue with its aggression and continue with this genocide. The reason being was that Hamas could not have been defeated at that particular point of time. There was a lot of perception that Hamas has won this war. Now, the criteria of who's a winning and who's a losing is quite simple. Israel has already said that we have to eliminate Hamas altogether. It's a zero-sum game. They have not been able to do so far, despite the fact that the Arab countries behind the scene is supporting apartheid Israel, despite the fact that there is no supplies of the weapons to Hamas, despite the fact that the Iran, by and large, has been cornered. Its supplies of the military weapons is not there. This is also despite the fact that the Hezbollah support from the Lebanon is not there. And nonetheless, Israel has not been able to even, I would say, contain Hamas in a manner where it can remove resistance altogether. Yes. So it has resorted to violence in a very, very systematic manner. We have seen that now even the so-called this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is basically comprising of the CIA and Mossad's contractors, and it is a kind of espionage operation. And during last couple of days, I think far more than 100 people have been killed at the aid distribution centers. Yes. People are being killed there. That is a death trap. That indicates that Israel has a bigger plan, and that everybody knows, to expel all people from Gaza so that it can fully occupy the territory.
Well, what is going to happen, we are going to see as it unfolds. Thank you so much for joining us, Javed. And that now brings us to the end of our program. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point, and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geo-strategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geo-strategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.